What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk about a handful of specific perks or perk styles that I hope we don't see in Modern Warfare 2 or Warzone 2 going forward. Some of these are perks that we've been dealing with the past few years of Call of Duty, and I just feel like the game would be better off without them. And then other perks are things that we maybe haven't seen for a while, but I just wanted to sort of reiterate that I hope we don't see them in the future as well. And let's just dive right into the list here with the first perk that is quite controversial. I think most people lean toward hating it, but at the same time, you tend to see a lot of people using it. This is Piercing Vision from Vanguard or Combat Scout from Warzone. Essentially a perk that allows you to highlight enemy players' character models through walls just by either dealing damage to them, or in the case of Vanguard, shooting in close proximity to them. You don't even have to hit them, you just have to shoot near them to make them highlighted through walls. In my opinion, these perks just don't have a good place in Call of Duty, and even though they technically have counter perks, you can use Dauntless and Vanguard to fully counter Piercing Vision, and with Combat Scout, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Cold-Blooded that counters this. I don't play a ton of Warzone, so I might be a little off on that, but I do know it has a counter. Even with that in mind, I just feel like these shouldn't be in the game because it kind of defeats the purpose of getting to cover and using concealment effectively. Now, part of the issue in Vanguard is the fact that you can shoot through so many of the walls. It feels like a lot of the surfaces are like paper. But even without that, I just feel like a perk like this that literally highlights the character model through walls just by shooting somebody, it just leads to a lot of frustrating situations. I feel it can be abused too heavily. And I also feel like it's not even rewarding to be getting those kills through walls when you can literally just see the character highlighted in bright red through a wall. In my opinion, if they wanted to have something somewhat similar to this, I'd much rather they go the Recon Pro route from Modern Warfare 3, where if you damage an enemy player while using this perk, it will show them in real time for a short period on the mini-map. And you could also do that on the compass for these newer games, rather than actually highlighting their character model. I would still consider that to be quite a powerful perk. It was quite powerful in Modern Warfare 3, and you can still use that information of the minimap combined with the knowledge of the map and what's in front of you to still try to get that wallbang kill against that player that you dealt damage to. But now it takes a little bit more knowledge and skill to make that happen, and therefore, if you do manage to get that wallbang kill with a perk like this, it feels much more rewarding than just seeing them highlighted in bright red and then just shooting them through that wall. So that's the first style of perk that I really hope we don't see return in Modern Warfare 2 as well as Warzone 2. I should mention though, just to be clear, I don't mind this sort of power coming in the form of a piece of equipment like a snapshot grenade. If it's a limited use, like you only have one piece of equipment, you throw it into a room, and then if any enemies are within that radius, it highlights them through walls for a brief period of time, that's fine with me because that would be a limited use sort of a thing where it only works if you have that piece of equipment on you. As for the next perk, or style of perk on my list here that I hope never returns to Call of Duty, this is anything that directly impacts player health or the amount of damage that you deal with bullets. So this covers the old school like stopping power and juggernaut from much older Call of Duty games. That has been eliminated for a long time, and I think that's a good thing. I think those perks shouldn't be in the game. But more recently, we've had a much more subtle version of this added to Vanguard and then eventually into Warzone, and this is Serpentine. And with Serpentine, for those that don't know, while sprinting, you will receive less damage from bullets, explosives, and fire. Now, this isn't nearly as powerful as Juggernaut from the past because it's not always working for you in every single situation. It literally only applies while you're sprinting. But even with that, I don't like the idea of any perk that directly impacts player health or bullet damage. And this is quite simply to maintain consistency in gunfights. To me, it's very important to have that consistency in the number of shots it takes to kill at any given range with a gun. So when you truly learn to master a gun, you know exactly how many hits are required at that particular range in order to kill your targets. And when you start mixing in perks like this, it throws that consistency off. And as a result, I just feel like the game in general is better off without them. Moving on, let's get into a perk that we actually haven't seen for several years, and I'm really happy to see that, but it's one of those things I just wanted to sort of reiterate just in case this does pop up at some point in the future. I hope we never see a persistence or requisition style perk return in the future. And for those that aren't aware, these perks allowed you to carry your kill streak through death, so you could die as many times as you wanted throughout a match without resetting your streak progress. However, in order to compensate for that, you did have a much higher requirement for the amount of score or kills that you would need in order to earn those streaks. And this one I feel is just quite simple. It really only applies to multiplayer, not so much with Warzone. But the whole idea behind this is I feel you should have to go on a streak in order to earn your streak rewards. And if I kill you off of your streak, that should be the end of that streak and you have to start it over again. It's a very simple dynamic that works well for Call of Duty. And I just hate those situations where you're consistently killing a player throughout a match only to have them drop a full set of the highest streaks on you by the end of the game. And there was really nothing you could do as an individual to prevent them from earning those streaks against you. Now, I will say I was fine with how they implemented Dead Drop into Vanguard, because that was a field upgrade. It was a limited use thing. It's not something that was just always active throughout an entire match. And if you timed it wrong, I could still shut your streak down. If I killed you 2 times in a row within a fairly short period of time before you could reactivate your Dead Drop, well, your streak's over. So it just would give you a second chance a few times throughout a match, rather than always being active for you throughout the entire match. And no matter how many times I kill you, it doesn't matter, you're still getting your streaks up. On a similar note, another perk I wanted to touch on briefly that we've only ever seen in Modern Warfare 2019, this is Point Man. I hope we don't have to use a perk in order to gain access to score streaks rather than kill streaks. If anything, my preference is having score streaks as default, and I'm talking traditional score streaks, not the Cold War style, but more like the Black Ops 2 style. I feel that should be the default because that would encourage objective play a whole lot more than kill streaks. But at the very least, even if that's not going to be the case and they insist on having kill streaks, I would hope we have a free choice to use score streaks without having to sacrifice one of our perks. So if I'm a really objective-oriented player, I can choose score streaks over kill streaks, or if I'm somebody that just prefers kill streaks and doesn't like touching the objective, then I could use that, and I wouldn't have to sacrifice a perk in order to make that choice. But finally, this leaves us with the last perk on my list, and this one might surprise some of you because this is a perk I use on almost every single class I use in Vanguard. This is Forward Intel. Now, this perk is ridiculously powerful. I still think there's a lot of players that don't quite understand just how powerful this perk is. But with Forward Intel, anytime an enemy player that isn't using Cold-Blooded respawns on the map, you get a clear indicator. You get that diamond indicator on your minimap that shows you exactly where they spawn at the exact moment that they spawn. And as much as I personally have taken advantage of this in Vanguard, I don't feel this should be a perk in the game. Overall spawn knowledge in Call of Duty is one of the bigger, higher level skills that tends to separate higher skill players from lower skill players. It's one of those big skill gaps in Call of Duty, being able to detect at any given time throughout a match where the enemy team is respawning, and then taking that to the next level, which route they're likely to take off of spawn and how long it will take them to get into your line of sight again. This is quite a big higher level skill, and by having this as a perk, it eliminates the need to learn how spawns work and learn how those timings work and understand everything about the system, and instead it just tells you exactly what's happening. And I feel that's not only overkill, but I also sort of feel like it gives the devs an excuse to not fully optimize their spawn systems. If you're constantly getting killed by bad spawns in Vanguard, that's no longer the game's fault, that's not the spawn system's fault, because you have access to this perk that would have told you when that bad spawn happened. So that's on you for not using this perk to counteract that bad spawn situation that just happened to you. And I don't think that's how it should be. If this perk didn't exist, there wouldn't be that excuse to fall back on, and therefore, if the game does have bad spawns, that's on the developers to fix and improve, not the player for not using a perk. So as much as I've come to rely on it in Vanguard, I really don't want to see a Forward Intel style perk return in Modern Warfare 2. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for my list of just a handful of perks that we've seen, mainly in recent years, that I hope we don't see return in the future. And this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First up, do you guys agree with the perks that I have on this list, or maybe disagree with any of them? And if so, please let me know why. And also, are there any other perks that you would add to this list? Perks that you think shouldn't exist in Call of Duty, and the game would just be better off without them? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.